participation articles of the Aarhus Convention. And the main topics that are standing out here are early participation, procedures for taking due account of the outcomes of public participation. So public comments need to be taken due account of, as well as provision of information on how public comments are taken into account. The European Eco Forum, which is probably familiar to many of you, but I will explain what it is anyway. It's a network of environmental, non-governmental organizations active throughout the UNECE region, both within and outside the European Union. This NGO network has conducted a survey among NGOs throughout the UNECE region, and the results of that survey were, amongst others, that national legislative frameworks are seen by NGOs to be more or less adequate when it comes to Articles 6 and 7, but they are seen as inadequate when it comes to Article 8. Another outcome was that the implementation of laws and other government actions to provide public participation was mostly considered to be inadequate. And the effectiveness of the laws was mostly considered highly inadequate. So there is a very skewed picture emerging from this survey, which also can be drawn on, can be used as a source of information in formulating policy steps, improvements of implementation, etc. Now, it's not all bad news. There are solutions. There is hope, so to speak. And I want to share with you some solutions and some practical ways that were discussed this summer. Practical ways and relatively logical, easy ways to improve implementation at the ground level. A first solution would be to achieve a common definition of public participation, of what public participation in decision-making means. It is possible that the expert group on public participation can play a role in achieving this. Possibly the future task force could play a role in this, but these task forces are only as strong as the countries that participate in them. So I would definitely encourage Romania and any other country to take part in the work of these bodies, to work towards things like a common use and common understanding of definitions and terms. The commitment of authorities to actively involving the public is extremely important, as are clear administrative procedures and legal structures. The public concerned should be broadly interpreted according to the experts, in order to make sure that nobody is left out and that nobody has problems proving that they have a legitimate claim or that they have a legitimate interest. So there are no obstacles in that sense hampering their participation. Public concerns, as I said before, ideally should be incorporated early on in a decision-making process, at the start of the drafting process, both for plans, programs, and policies. And a way to do this is to organize roundtables before the first draft is made. The problem is that as soon as a draft has been written, it becomes more difficult to incorporate concerns, especially when you're dealing with highly critical voices. It is better and easier in the long run to incorporate these critical voices early on, rather than go through a whole process, draft a plan or a program, and at the end kind of hit a wall when you encounter highly critical actors. And at that point, at a later stage, it's much more difficult to incorporate concerns because the minds are less open to incorporate them. A very practical tool to improve access and public, to improve reaching the concerned public and improve their ability to participate and to be notified is to use multiple means of communication and use means of communication in as many ways as possible, so that if you can't reach a target group one way, you can reach them in another way. It's good to be flexible and inclusive in the way you use communication tools. And it's also important to adjust your communication to fit the target group you're trying to reach. The provision of reasonable time frames is very important, particularly when it comes to the submission of public comments. And it's important to provide balanced information which addresses different aspects of an issue instead of just putting the spotlight on one dimension of a problem. The active informing of interested groups is very important, and as I said, taking due account of public comments. Review comments, discuss them, evaluate them, and then take them into consideration as you develop a plan or a program or a policy. It's also extremely helpful, and it's experienced by the interested public as a true, as they feel that they're being taken seriously when you explain to them how comments were incorporated or how they were not incorporated. So experts recommend to publish a report after the decision has been made on how public comments were incorporated in the decision-making process. And a final recommendation is that facilitation by a third party can often have a very beneficial impact. I would like to mention just 2 examples of good practice that came out of the meeting of the expert group. Austria has adopted a document called Standards of Public Participation that contains recommendations, and it does not only pertain to environmental issues.